Welcome to another episode of The Green Rush. Every Friday, we come together to bring you the best stories in cannabis and some of the greatest guests. I'm David Rabinovitz, the co-host with the senior host.
That would be me, Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. Thank you so much for allowing me to have a senior role here, David.
You're very welcome, Jimmy.
And this is a good opportunity, I think, to actually punch you up a little bit, push you up a little bit, build you up a little bit. You're going to be a featured speaker at the New England Cannabis Convention in New Jersey in Atlantic City next week. Isn't that right?
Next weekend, yes. I'm going to be doing what is becoming the speech I'm known for, the political and business history of cannabis in the United States. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
And you should be looking forward to it. And if anybody is in that Atlantic City area or is driving down either up from Washington, near Philadelphia, New York, Boston, wherever, I can recommend that David's ability to give you little tidbits that you never knew, things that you never heard of before. This is one of the things that I really enjoy listening to him pontificate about the business and political history of cannabis in this country. So I'm giving you a big plug, David. I hope a lot of people show up for this presentation, and I'm looking forward to seeing you do it.
Well, I appreciate that, Jimmy. And then I'm going to be doing the same presentation up in New Hampshire on October 7th for the New Hampshire Cannabis Association.
Fantastic. And the best part is, I know you've practiced it over and over and over again. You could probably do it in your sleep, right?
Yeah, we're getting there, but close to it.
All right, let's bring Morgan Fox on from the NCIA, our friendly communication director from the NCIA. And Morgan, you guys are at it again. Our lead story on Weed Talk News is the amendment of the Safe Banking Act and the defense budget for 2022. How did that come about?
Well, considering that there's tremendous amount of support for the Safe Banking Act in the House, but there is a little bit less, although there's still significant bipartisan support in the Senate. Senate leadership is a little bit reticent to move safe banking or other incremental reforms before their comprehensive package is introduced. Members of the House who have been championing this issue for years have been trying to put it on to any must-pass legislation that they can in order to get this done, because it's absolutely vital for small businesses that don't have access to capital and don't have access to banks, unlike the major MSOs and other well-funded companies, to be able to get access to these financial services and make banks more comfortable working with them, because speed to market is so important. And every day that goes by where there is a lack of access to banking means that small businesses are falling farther and farther behind. So our champions in the House, particularly Representative Perlmutter, have been trying to attach this to anything they can, and it passes every single time. This is now the fifth time that the Safe Banking Act has passed in some form or another on one bill or another, or standalone in the last 2 years. So, I think that it's pretty clear that this is the mandate of the People's Chamber.
And now, of course, the question is this the way politics gets done when you can't get it done in a partisan split like there is in the Senate? In other words, if the Senate Republicans who continue to block any cannabis reform so far, is this a way for them to say, okay, it's part of the defense budget, we need to get the defense budget in? Or do they look at it as, oh, those sneaky Democrats are amending this, trying to get this passed, this little cannabis reform bill passed? It's really about public safety, not about cannabis reform, right?
Well, it's absolutely about public safety, and it's also about fairness and economic development. It remains to be seen whether Senate Republicans will try to attack this the way that they did the inclusion of safe banking language in the HEROES Act last year. I tend to think not. But at the same time, there's also some opposition for its inclusion among Democratic leadership who, in my opinion, mistakenly think that passing banking reform for cannabis will slow down momentum for comprehensive reform. And as we've talked about before, I just don't think that that's the case. I think it's the exact opposite, that it will actually increase reform or increase momentum and make it easier for people that are on the fence to vote for more comprehensive bills. But it remains to be seen exactly how that's going to play out.
Yep.
When you take something away that's a burden, it frees whoever had that burden up to do other things. And right now, banking is a big burden in the cannabis industry. Take that off people's plate, maybe they can focus on other issues, which is economic development, right? Growing their businesses, as well as talking to the politicians as to why cannabis is just growing like crazy. When you look at the revenues, yeah, I'm amazed. Jimmy and I did a dry run of my presentation the other night, and when we're making some adjustments, but what I'm really surprised at, the slides I had to update from 2019 pre-COVID to today, and you look at what the projections were in 2019 as to where we'd be in 2024 versus where they are today. The industry is far exceeding anybody's wildest expectations.
Well, this industry is becoming a major economic driver and a major employer. The last jobs report showed that there were more than 300,000 people employed in the cannabis industry. And given the purported support for small businesses on both sides of the aisle, and the fact that lack of access to banking really impacts smaller businesses and social equity operators much more so than big businesses or MSOs, this should be a no-brainer. It's a real easy thing for Congress to get accomplished, considering that it's got bipartisan support, and there are just so many co-sponsors on this that it should be pretty easy to move through if leadership will allow it to happen. And I'm hopeful that once the new and updated and official version of the Cannabis Administration and Opportunity Act is introduced in the Senate, then some of the more incremental measures like the Safe Banking Act will actually be able to start getting hearings. But I think that's something that we're just going to have to wait and see on. And we are expecting, or at least hoping for, official introduction of that, incorporating all of the feedback that Senate leadership got from NCIA, as well as our advocacy allies in the space, as well as individuals throughout the cannabis industry and throughout the country, to make the bill that they introduced much better than what the draft was, which was still pretty good considering. But there were some major issues that I think that the drafters kind of overlooked because of lack of familiarity with the nuances that are at play with the cannabis industry. But either way, we're still pushing on.
Right. I mean, Michael Correa, when he comes on, he's always talked about low-hanging fruit and getting safe banking across the line once and for all. I was kind of surprised when I read the story that it was added to an amendment to a regular defense budget bill. Is that business as usual in politics, that if you can't get the thing going through the front door, you try and do it through the back door or a side door as an amendment?
I mean, that does seem to be the case, considering all the riders that get attached to all of the big bills that have to go through Congress. But, in this particular case, it's a very calculated strategic move because this is must-pass legislation. And it actually, I think it's entirely appropriate, just like it was appropriate to attach it to the HEROES Act because it had a direct relationship to economic recovery and public safety and public health. It's equally important to attach it to the NDAA because the Safe Banking Act would address a lot of issues with transparency and would also help to minimize the unregulated market and help unregulated actors come into the regulated market, and would help minimize some of the impacts of transnational drug trafficking organizations on both the U.S. and the global cannabis market.
Part of the safe banking, though, has nothing to do with our veterans. So the veterans who continue to get pushed aside by the VA when they come to seek help for PTSD, and knowing some of the track record of cannabis as far as treatment goes, there's no way to add access for cannabis for veterans on top of the amendment to safe banking, since that seems to be a strategy, right? I mean, I'm just waving the flag for our friends, the veterans, who I think continue to get screwed in this process, to be honest with you.
Well, there are actually a number of provisions related to veteran access that are included in various appropriations plans that both chambers of Congress are currently considering.
Right. But it's not part of this. This is safe banking. What was passed, I think it was 321-101 in the House, and now attached to this defense budget that has to get passed by the Senate. It's almost like you're force feeding this to the senators. Am I right?
Well, I'm going to claim a little bit of ignorance. There very well may be amendments or language in the larger NDAA package that relate to cannabis access to veterans.
Okay.
But it's such a huge bill, and I think that it may have escaped my individual notice, but that doesn't mean that it's not there.
Yeah, I know. Of all to me, again, I try to simplify this. It just boggles my mind that it's taken this long for something that I think is as simple as banking for a $24 billion industry. Call me crazy. If I'm a banker, I'm thinking I'd like to have access to some of that market some way, in some capacity. And the fact that there are still Republicans out there that are resisting it because it comes from the other side of the aisle bothers me beyond another story for another day.
First of all, there's bipartisan support for the Safe Banking Act.
You know that. Yeah.
And second of all, I think that that sort of exact argument should appeal to regulators and policymakers as well.
Right.
The lack of transparency, while most cannabis businesses are on the up and up, it makes it much easier to confirm that with law enforcement as well as financial authorities and regulators if they have universal access to banking. And not to mention the fact that, this very much is a public safety issue. The businesses that are still operating on a cash only basis are, at real risk. And that should be a major concern for law enforcement. It should be a major concern for policymakers. And, even beyond that, it's a simple issue of fairness. But this is nothing that we haven't covered before.
Right. Can you enlighten me about politics and how politics is done in DC? You've got a bipartisan bill that was supported by House Republicans, correct? Right. It passed. There are actually Republicans in the House of Representatives who voted for safe banking. That's a fact, right?
We actually had majority Republican support of those voted.
So aren't those people, don't they talk to the senators in the same party, in the same state? They know who they are. Do they ever talk to each other? Do they actually, I would like to know what's holding it up besides the fact that your side said this and your side said that. So I don't want to have anything to do with it. And go ahead.
When it comes to banking, it really comes down to a misconception that a lot of people in the Democratic leadership unfortunately hold, that access to safe banking is just going to be a free-for-all for big companies, and that it will slow momentum down for comprehensive reform, which we absolutely need. And,
right.
Is something that NCIA is also working on in consort with working on incremental reforms. But the bottom line is that big companies already have banking. They already have access to capital. Small businesses, and particularly social equity operators, do not. And speed to market is absolutely important. If we continue on the status quo while we continue to debate the best way to deschedule cannabis and regulate it at the federal level, that is going to mean months, if not years, where smaller businesses and minority-owned businesses are going to be falling farther and farther behind because they don't have access to banking and other financial services.
Right.
And also, historically, cannabis policy reform has been very incremental. And every time you pass a bill that is sort of finite and limited, it makes people that are on the fence about broader legislation that much more comfortable putting their name and support behind something that is going to have a bigger impact. And we've seen this in state after state after state, to a limited amount. We've seen this in the federal government as well, when it comes to support for things like appropriations amendments that would protect state legal medical and adult use programs. So, I think it's just a slight miscalculation on the part of certain members of Democratic leadership, and we're actively working to try to convince them otherwise.
Well, we know you're working hard, and we also know that you went through a little traumatic experience in the office there. You want to share that with us? Because there's nothing more scary than fire, right?
True, especially when you're not the one that started it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just a little backstory. The restaurant that was adjoining NCIA's DC office was completely gutted by a fire, and the fire department destroyed our office last week in order to put that fire out. So, we're working out of pocket, but that has not stopped our government relations team for even 1 second. And at this moment, we're gearing up for a House Judiciary hearing next week to look at the MORE Act in the House. And I believe it's a markup as well. So, things are definitely still rolling, and our team is still 100% on the ball.
So the MORE Act may make a second appearance?
Absolutely. I mean, it was always going to come up again. And because the CAOA hasn't even been introduced in the Senate yet, it's definitely not been introduced in the House.
Right.
And, I think that we're probably going to get to a position somewhere down the road where we have to square those up in a conference committee. But at the very least, the fact that the House, or at least House committees, are holding markups on comprehensive cannabis policy reform is, I think, indicative of what I was saying before, where they've passed the Safe Banking Act 5 times now, and now they're ready to start digging back into the MORE Act, even though they already passed that. Now they're going to start looking at the details of that again and moving it along in the current session, and hopefully that will put a little bit of a fire under the Senate, as well as bring in a lot of people that might have been on the fence on the last vote because of various partisan issues, to look at this bill as something that the American people clearly want, and that could create huge benefit in terms of criminal justice reform and economic development.
Great. Hey, one last thing. The second part of our show is we're going to be looking at the tourism industry and how they are uniquely positioned to take advantage of this pro-cannabis movement. There's quite a bit of movement in various inns, bed and breakfasts, hotel chains. They're looking to embrace the acceptance of cannabis in our world. What's the official industry feeling about cannabis tourism?
Well, it's interesting because the cannabis tourism was sort of a novelty when there were only a handful of states that actually had regulated cannabis markets. Right. And now that we've expanded significantly to that, surprisingly, the tourism industry related directly to cannabis has not really shrunk at all, and in fact has expanded. And I think that's largely because both people from outside of the United States who are traveling within the country are interested in taking part, and they now have a lot more options. They don't just have to go to Colorado and Washington anymore. Right. But also, cannabis consumers within the United States who want to travel to different states are making decisions about their travel based on accessibility to cannabis, and also wanting to look at what more established cannabis systems look like before they bring that information back to their home states. So, it's not really unexpected to see this particular niche of the industry continuing to blossom.
Right. And it's a great opportunity for the tourism industry to bounce back, because they too took it on the chin during the pandemic. And this is a great opportunity to right those wrongs and come out from under, so to speak.
Exactly. When you offer a service and access that is not necessarily available in every state, but you really lean into it, there are a lot of cannabis consumers out there, or at least people that are curious about what the industry or what the environment looks like around cannabis. And, it's definitely something that people in regulated states should be taking advantage of. And, it's something that tourists are thinking about when they're planning trips.
Absolutely. Now, Morgan, you usually make an appearance the third Friday of most months. I understand there's a blessed event that you and your wife are about to enjoy over the next few weeks. I wish you good luck with that. And needless to say, if and when this blessed event happens, you are excused from your appearance next month. Okay. You're going to have your hands full, right?
I'm going to carve out time. Still got me.
Sounds like a guy who knows what it's like to have a newborn in the house.
All right. Well, Morgan Fox, good luck. Congratulations. Stay out of that restaurant. Good luck with the rebuild of the office in Washington, D.C. And we will look forward to talking with you again next month.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. That's Morgan Fox, the Director of Communications for the NCIA out of Washington, D.C. It is about 4:20. For those of you who don't remember, David, do you want to walk us through, since you're going to be doing the business and political history of cannabis in this country? I know you're well versed in the 420 origin. Would you like to walk us through it and introduce Jonathan Edwards?
Well, absolutely. As many of you may know, and for those who watch this show regularly, you've heard it every week from Jimmy, except for when Kurt and I have taken over.
Yeah.
Back in San Rafael, California, I believe it was.
Yep.
4:20 in the afternoon, a group called the Waldos would meet by a particular statue. And I don't remember what the statue is.
Louis Pasteur statue.
Louis Pasteur statue, and light up.
Right.
And the police local law enforcement became aware of it. And they coined their own term of 420 because that's when the kids got there, as an indication of we got young people smoking marijuana. And in honor of that, since we're on the East Coast, when Jimmy was young, back before radio and TV, when we used to communicate by smoke signals, way back then, one of his favorite songs was Shanty by Jonathan Edwards. And we have a clip of Shanty that we play routinely from 420 to 425, and we're about to go to it.
Yeah, we're about to go to it. Don't go to it yet, Dan, because he did forget the fact that one of the Waldos became friends with a member of the Grateful Dead, and the Dead perpetuated the myth of the passion that is 420. It's now since been embraced by the culture. So you know what, David? You did very well. If I was a professor grading you, I'd give you a B+ on that, if that's okay. Is that okay?
I'll accept it, Jimmy.
I'm a fair grader. In the meantime, let's go to Jonathan Edwards. We'll come back on the other side. We have a very special guest coming in from Burns and Levinson. Frank Segall joins us next on Green Rush Live. Don't go away.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 19... I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just, like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. You're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. Nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. sit down in my rented car and gonna jam it into drive. Gonna head on out and play at WSCA with Sean. I'm glad I'm alive. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on every night and day. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be. All right, welcome back to Green Rush Live for Friday afternoon. I'm Jimmy Young with Pro Cannabis Media, joined every week by
David Rabinovitz.
That's you. And we are waiting Frank Segall from Burns Levinson, who we expect to join us at any moment. So so David and I will continue to pontificate. They are running, Burns Levinson is running their 5th annual State of the Cannabis Industry Conference on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, in the Massachusetts area. It's in Waltham, which is a suburb of Boston. And it's a 9 to 5 event at the Waltham Westin, if I remember correctly, right, David?
Yep.
And he's got quite a set of luminaries and officials ready to go there. They'll be interviewing Stephen Hoffman, the commissioner of the Massachusetts Cannabis Commission. And David, if you had an opportunity to interview Stephen Hoffman, and I do believe we have him scheduled in about a month or so, what are some of the things you'd want to talk to him about? What are some of the things you would ask Stephen Hoffman about as you look at the Massachusetts cannabis scene right now? And I have a few, but I'm interested to hear what you might be interested in, especially for someone now who's actively pursuing a license.
Yes. Well, so the things I would be interested to talk to the commissioner about, the subjects, and these haven't changed much, is really, I am very interested in how the commission is going to manage canopy in the state. I have been many times shunned by my views, though I've got a real recharge as of late because of the Robert Mikos paper, right? And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, there is a Vanderbilt law professor who published a 40-page document back in July. It was published by the Boston University Law Library. If you would, or rather the Boston University Law Review, you can find it on the internet by Googling Robert Mikos cannabis interstate transport. And the gist of it is, Professor Mikos contends that under the Dormant Commerce Clause of the United States Constitution, the states cannot ban interstate commerce of cannabis. And it wouldn't take too much to tip over most of the state regulations that are prohibiting interstate commerce. As soon as interstate commerce happens, it's going to change the industry within a year. A lot of people are going to go out of business. I don't know that I would want to be a holder of certain real estate investments, because marijuana at the end of the day is an agricultural product. And it is a relatively large plant when you compare it to herbs. It doesn't grow well economically in warehouses. It just doesn't make sense. And when you compare the cost of growing it in a warehouse with all the lighting, electricity, and HVAC required to the cost of growing it outdoors, once you can transport it across state lines, I've said this before, JetBlue is going to be the big winner, because all the people on the East Coast are going to be flying to the West Coast to find weed that's grown outdoors by licensed growers so they can bring it back. What's the Cannabis Control Commission in Massachusetts going to do? How are they going to modify the regs? How are they going to accommodate that? Are they going to be like the FDA and put their head in the sand and say, well, we'll wait for it to happen? Or are they going to be like the DOJ and say, gee, this is on the radar. Maybe we better start figuring out how to handle it when it does happen. That would probably be the biggest I would want.
All right. So interstate commerce, you think, according to the law professor, you should be able to do this right now, he says, right?
That's right. And Frank is joining us now.
Terrific. And let's wait for him to connect to his audio and look up. There he is, working hard, preparing for his own conference. Hi, Frank.
Hey, how you doing, Jimmy?
Good. Hey, welcome back to the show. And again, thank you for all your support over the years. You know, we've all survived this pandemic, and we're coming out on the other side running in-person conferences now. So it's going to be fun to see everybody in 3D on Tuesday.
Who would have thought we'd be back, right?
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And most of us are vaccinated. By the way, do you guys have your COVID policy in place as far as the conference goes? I have to ask that right off the top.
Yeah, I was very insistent, actually, that in order to attend live, you have to show proof of vaccination.
Ooh, that's right.
Yeah.
Right. I have it. I have a card. I have a picture of the card. I still have an X on my arm. I can really prove that I've been vaccinated for sure.
And, you know, we try to think we're pioneers and at the forefront of this industry. I think we're pioneers of the conference too, because after we did that, there was a couple conferences that called us and they started doing the same thing. So
Right.
I think there's going to be more of that.
Right. And you're starting to see, and look, TD Garden, Celtics and Bruins games this year are going to be even more and more difficult to get in. You're going to have to plan well in advance to be prepared in order to go see a live sporting event indoors moving forward, just as we get through this. But Frank, talk a little bit about your conference. You've got like a dream team lineup, it looks like.
Yeah, no, we're really fortunate to have the ability to attract industry leaders, people who are really on the front lines and can impart not only wisdom, but practical experience and insight into the industry. And, you know, a number of these speakers we're fortunate to call clients, so it's easy for us to reach out to them. But others, we, you know, simply call them, tell them about the conference, they've heard about it. And, you know, it's great that after 5 years, we've gained that kind of reputation as a very high quality, practical, rational platform for speakers to engage in the audience. And, you know, we've got some great speakers this year, very timely. You know, we cover everything from the regulatory, as you know, it's become a mainstay to interview Commissioner Hoffman, who will be joining us again. This year, we also have another spotlight interview with two major players in the capital markets. We've got Riv Capital, which is very timely because they just took in $150 million from Scott's Miracle-Gro to go on an acquisition tear, which is very interesting because now you have a major New York Stock Exchange company coming into the market kind of in a backdoor way. And Sundial Growers, which is about an $800 million capital fund out of Canada, which is being very aggressive in entering the U.S. markets through a debt play. So you've got equity and debt. We have, we like to showcase new technology. We like to highlight, obviously, what's going on in the regulatory markets. So we really try to, in a short time frame, have 4 or 5 panels that really will hit hot topics and practical, provide practical insight into what is really confronting this industry. And people who are entering this industry hear from top CEOs, from around the country, we've got local operators from Massachusetts, we've got regional players, we've got national players. So we're very excited about the lineup this year. And the turnout has been incredible. I mean, we're already, as you know, Jimmy, we usually have around 200 people show up. We're already at 300 people this year.
Wow.
So we're very excited in a pandemic.
Right.
So that's, and we are streaming it as well. So people have access if they can't travel here or if they're concerned about being in that environment with a lot of people. So.
Very cool. Well, absolutely. And that still is a concern. I think we all recognize that. And it's another reason why get yourself vaccinated, show your card, try to get back to whatever normalization you can. Before you came on, David and I were talking about the Vanderbilt law professor, Robert Mikos, and his paper about interstate commerce. David, I'm going to let you ask the question of Frank now that I've set that up. Go ahead.
Okay. Frank, have you seen his paper, Frank?
No, I haven't, but is this on the dormancy clause, I assume?
Yes.
He's pretty articulate that interstate commerce can't be prohibited by the states. And that his paper seems to indicate that if somebody took a run at it, he seems confident they could tip over any of the regulations that prohibit interstate commerce of cannabis between states that have legalized it.
Well, I haven't read his paper, but the argument and the concern really has to do with when we go federally legal. So I don't agree, and who might argue with a professor, that the dormancy clauses would enable you to do that today. People feel that it will enable you to do that once it's federally legal. There are people in this industry who bank very heavily on California and no other state, and one of the reasons they're doing that is because I've actually engaged in this discussion with some major operators about the dormancy clause. They feel that this was brought up in the alcoholic beverage industry, and then the states obviously passed their own regulation, but that's where this all emanated from. And there are groups that feel that if this does go federal, the dormancy clause will come into effect, and you literally will have the walls broken down that you can have interstate commerce. And who you're going to buy your pot from? Are you going to buy your weed from Fall River Grow, or are you going to buy it from Humboldt Farms in California? So it's a very serious concern that some people have, and whether or not the states will be able to keep those walls up. I think they will, like the alcohol and beverage industry, regulated in that manner, because otherwise, look, California could supply the entire country, and you would decimate cultivation, particularly on the East Coast, if that were to happen. So it is something that it's not, science fiction. It's a real topic of discussion that could very well come into play in who knows when, but maybe 3, 4, 5 years if it goes federal, right?
And I was just about to ask you what you think the time frame is on that, because everybody has different projections on it. I actually think you're being optimistic with your 3 to 4 years, Frank. I'd like to see it tomorrow. Don't get me wrong. That being said, the current political climate in Washington, D.C. right now is not conducive to getting much done at all. And that concerns anybody, I would think, in the cannabis industry. If they can't even pass, basic principles and get everybody to get shots in their arms and stuff, it's really the most dysfunctional I've seen DC in my lifetime. Can I say that? Even back in the 70s?
Yeah, no, look, we're all seeing if this, I call it the backdoor Trojan horse, attaching the safe banking bill to the tax bill. Is that going to work? They've tried that before. I don't know if it will. So it's taken years to get that passed. That's the next step. I don't disagree with you. I don't think it's 3 years for federal legalization. I think it is more like 4 or 5 years. And then again, who knows? But let's see if the Safe Banking Act passes in the next 6 to 9 months.
Right. I mean, could it be a domino effect? Could you actually get one thing like that passed as an amendment even, and then perhaps start focusing on reform? We just had, we've had Michael Correa on from the NCIA, Morgan Fox on a regular basis as well. And, they maintain they're confident that they could get something done, but I'm trying to figure out how they're going to do it. And I just don't know how. I keep saying, aren't the House Republicans friendly with the Senate Republicans? And can't they just figure out a way to find common ground? It's not as simple as that. I know.
Yeah, no, I don't play in DC, so leave that up to the politicians. But we all want to see something happen, and it's a question. I don't think it is a domino effect. I think if that passes, people are going to say, "Hey, I just gave you the Safe Banking Act. We got to deal with other things right now."
So it could end up backfiring or hurting the legalization movement. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that. I just think it's one step. This is an industry that crawls before it runs on Capitol Hill.
Right. So. That's right. All right. I appreciate that. Are there any announcements that might be coming from new companies? Is this a loaded question, Frank? Because you know exactly what I'm talking about. Any new of new companies that might be, I don't know, we both may know about them without me naming names.
No, you can name names. You know me. I'm a fully transparent guy. You know that.
Okay.
One of our panels is technology, e-commerce delivery.
Yep.
And fintech, as Jimmy is alluding to.
Right. Without saying.
Look, a number of the panelists are clients, but I'm also involved in the launch of one company called KindTap.
Yep.
I've always been at the forefront with my partner, Scott Moskal, who founded this group with me, and dealing with banking issues. And we've helped bring lenders into this industry, but we also look for, the gaps in dealing with the consumer and finance products, et cetera. So I got involved with a company called KindTap, helped launch it. And we are truly providing the first digital credit card platform for consumers to be used in dispensaries. And we'll be pretty much announcing and launching it and featuring it at the conference. There are a lot of companies that say you can use credit cards, you cannot. MasterCard, Visa, or Amex do not allow it. And if you are using it, they will shut you down. I mean, he's got caught in a big lawsuit in the delivery. And there are companies that say, okay, you can use your credit card, you'll forward purchase through a cash purchase, our credit or our Bitcoins or whatever, and then we'll use that to buy cannabis. KindTap doesn't do that. KindTap is a fully compliant platform. You walk in, it's on your, if the dispensary accepts it, it's on your phone. We basically created our own credit card. It's a closed loop system. For those of listening who are old enough to remember the Diners Club.
I had a Diners Club card.
Okay, well, KindTap is like a Diners Club.
Okay.
And it will have rewards and loyalty programs. So it truly is unique and fully compliant, and it runs on a U.S. regulated bank. So it's been fully vetted, and it's been over 18 months in the making. So KindTap's very excited to unveil this at the conference.
So that will allow you to have a revolving credit card for cannabis, so I could actually fund the usage for medicine and that sort of thing?
Yes.
Like I would.
You'll have credit on KindTap. You walk in and you can use that, and you have credit. And if you don't want credit, it can tie into your bank account for debit. But the big difference is it's not MasterCard. It's its own card. So unlike these other digital platforms that are either skating on ice or doing things behind the system, this is fully transparent, and we don't deal with Amex or MasterCard's rails. We're on our own rail system. So,
Frank, which panel will the folks from KindTap be on?
That'll be on the first panel, the Disruptors panel. We're very excited to also have the CEO of Lantern.
Meredith.
Meredith is on the panel. We have a few other e-commerce platforms. We also are very excited. We have one of the heads of compliance, Nina from Hound Labs, and they are developing the first THC breathalyzer. So significant amount of capital has gone into this company. They just closed a $20 million raise by several of the leading, not only cannabis venture capitalists, but non-cannabis venture capital funds, including Benchmark, which is one of the top in the world. They just did a $20 million round with Tuatara and Entourage Capital, also clients of ours, we're excited to say. And we were involved in that round, and that's how we met Hound Labs, and that's how we invited them to the conference.
Very cool. The breathalyzer, for a second, okay? If it's designed to predict or create or measure how much THC you have in your system, now the legal question remains, are you impaired if you have X number of milligrams in your system, and can you drive while you have that much in there? How do you, where's that going to be in the law world?
You know what? I'm going to have you tune in on the conference. And we're going to talk.
Well, as I've always said, Frank, the best investment in cannabis is really with a law firm, because not only are you guys making the laws, you're going to fight the laws, you're going to write the laws, you're going to dispute the laws. That's your business. So, you know,
We interpret the laws. So
what's that?
we help you interpret the law.
Right. Well, you know, you gotta, you know, and it, because we're all part of history, right? Everything's being written as we go along. And I think that disruptors panel, which you say is the first one of the day, is that at 9 a.m.?
Yes. Yeah. I think
Okay.
it is. I've just
So that
been-
means my videographer, Dan, you and I both have to be there by 9 a.m. because I think that's the best. That's going to be the really cool panel that's the newsworthy panel, if you will, for no disrespect to your questioning of Stephen Hoffman. Okay.
Well, he follows that panel. So he's
Okay.
right afterwards.
What can you tell us? What's the latest on social clubs in Massachusetts? And granted, you know, they got a break with the pandemic because they just said, well, nobody wants to socialize anyway. So, you know, we'll put this on the back burner. Is there a plan? Is there a time frame? Do you know of anything going on with that?
I really haven't heard anything new, and that's a question that we can ask Commissioner Hoffman at the conference. You know, you've heard of some state, you know, Vegas is now having social consumption. It'll be interesting to see how that goes, because I assume they're going to do what most states have said: you can't mix alcohol in
Right.
those social consumption lounges. So, yeah, you know, I think that there hasn't been a rush to get into that, because that's a big part of it. You know, alcohol pays the bills, and you know, are people going to really go to a social consumption club to have some edibles and can't drink or do other things? Don't know yet. I mean, there's been no, you know, nobody's come up with the right regs. Certainly Boston hasn't done anything. So I think, you know, other than Worcester, you know, with one lounge, I mean, I'm not aware of anything really happening.
Yeah, it's really a shame, because the plant itself is about socialization. It's always has been. And now, of course, because of the pandemic, we're not socializing as much. I didn't even see a lot of that on the Freedom Rally, which was really kind of enlightening this past Saturday in Massachusetts, with the so much open consumption going on. And by the way, if anybody is even thinking about drinking while on an edible, do me a favor and don't. Okay. It isn't worth it. You're going to have a bad experience. Just either or. Do an either or thing. Is that fair, Frank?
That is fair, but also just to address your question a little more in detail. I mean, what I did see, there were, you know, we had some clients that were considering launching social consumption elsewhere in the country.
Yep.
And the pandemic absolutely killed those plans.
Right.
I mean, think about it. You're going to launch a restaurant in the middle of the pandemic? No.
Well, I know one actually. They got launched and they're doing very well on Moody Street, Venota. I told them I'd give them a plug.
You weren't going to do it a year ago. You weren't going to launch
He did it in August of 2020.
Yeah.
Right. So he didn't do it in March of 2020. He did it in August of 2020. And by the way, it's a great restaurant, Moody Street. I'll give him a plug. Italian food. David, I'm sure you've been there. David? No, I just want to wake him up, Frank. You know, that's what I was.
David always has his mute button on. He forgets he has his mute button on.
Well, it's because he's got his dogs running around. He lives in a kennel, for crying out loud, right?
Right. The dogs run the house.
The dogs run
Just
out.
simply the caretakers. That happened. Frank and I were on a call the other day, and that he had to keep reminding me I was on mute.
Frank, let's get back. There's a little serious conversation about access to capital. Everybody talks about it when it comes to cannabis, especially when it comes to social equity applicants. Even though not all social equity applicants need access to capital, I want to clarify that. However, it definitely can help the smaller operator. Does the advent of Kind Tap open up an opportunity for some mom and pop people out there that perhaps don't have access to big capital, but might want a revolving line of credit?
Not really Kind Tap, because Kind Tap is consumer.
Just consumer. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there are other. Look, we have a whole panel on capital.
Okay.
And that certainly is a very big hot button, not only for the capital panel, but you'll hear from the commissioner on this as well, because this is one of his, I think, top priorities. One of his top priorities. biggest causes is creating more capital for social equity and economic empowerment. And I know he's going to talk about a few initiatives he's working on and what his goals are there. So it's definitely, a topic that you'll hear about at the conference. And there are other groups on the Capital panel that, could be sources to help those kind of companies.
So he's talked about a state bank before. Is that still being floated around?
No, I don't.
I didn't think so. I just wanted to throw it out there. I remember him talking about it.
I think it's too difficult for any bank, any state to create a state cannabis bank.
Yeah.
Plus, you have more and more banks coming into the space. So, in Massachusetts, there are, other banks that are about to come in that I'm aware of that we help advise. And so I think you're going to continue to see more proliferation and access to capital and banking services. Not at the federal level. That's not going to happen until it's federally legal. But you definitely are seeing more players in Massachusetts and throughout the country at the credit unions and the state chartered banks.
That's great. That is great. What about, so we're pretty much, what else do you have for the afternoon? What are your panels like in the afternoon?
So, we do have a regulatory panel that will talk about what's going on nationally, what kind of new issues. We have Cohn Resnick, one of the leading accounting firms in the country in the cannabis space. We'll be talking about 280E and tax issues, things of that nature. And, as I mentioned, we've got co-CEOs from Sundial and from Riv. I'm going to be interviewing them at lunchtime. Two of the most active capital providers in the country. And then we have we'll end with our CEO panel. Where we've got local roots, we've got Garden Remedies, Meramed, and we also have Agrify, CEO from Agrify, which is a public company that's making real inroads with new technology, new cultivation, and approaching this industry in a very different way than traditional cultivators are. So, we've got some every panel is fantastic, really top people who have come in from around the country. This is not a pay to play conference. Our speakers, they do it because they want to, not because we charge them. So I think that gives a lot of credibility to this conference because a lot of conferences aren't like that. So we're very, very excited, to have these, executives, men and women from around the country join us.
Is Burns and Levinson heading out to MJ BizCon again this year in person, or are we virtual?
No, we are going. Scott, myself, my team will be there. I don't know if we'll do a cocktail party with 500 people like we did 2 years ago.
I remember that.
That was
we try to be cautious, but we'll be meeting with people. I think a lot of meetings, cocktail events, will be outdoors,
right?
Which is prudent. But it'll be interesting to see how big a crowd they get. I think people are going.
Right.
Sense I get.
I booked.
And, we'll be there in full force, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, as am I. And we booked our flights yesterday and rooms and all that. So no turning back now, Frank. We'll be on the strip, as they say, and it'll be an adventure. And I'll have plenty of my masks with me, so whenever I go inside. But I do think that going inside and then meeting outside is going to be a pattern. What do you think?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Some of the, starting to get some of the invites to events, and most of them seem to be outside.
Yeah.
And I think the ones that are inside, people are going to be a little concerned about. They might not get the attendance they want.
There you go. Well, Frank Segall, you've always been a friend of Pro Cannabis Media and our efforts here, and I really appreciate your support over the years. I look forward to seeing your conference on Tuesday, seeing you out at MJ BizCon, as well as we slowly get back to normalcy. And I would also think there's a lot of pride in the fact that Massachusetts, here we are a few years into the adult use market. about 8 years in since the medical program began, Massachusetts is starting to take an interesting leadership role in the disrupting different technologies that are out there, the growing. You must be pretty proud of the fact of what this state has been able to accomplish over the last few years, the first few years of its existence in the cannabis industry in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I know it certainly wasn't easy going for clients and operators to get into this space, in Massachusetts in the beginning. There were growing pains. But I do honestly and sincerely believe that the CCC has really created a commission that is user-friendly in many respects, that has gotten a lot better than it ever has. I think a lot of that has to do with, weathering a pandemic, getting, funding. And we work very closely with them on behalf of our clients, and we find that it's a terrific working relationship. So I think Massachusetts is always trying to be a model in different areas, and I think that they are becoming a model for other states in cannabis. I really do.
And tickets are still available. How do people get them if they want to attend at this point on the Burns and Levinson website, right?
Well, they just go to our BNL website and certainly can access tickets. Again, you got to be vaccinated to get in, and there's that protocol. And we just wanted to create a safe environment for our guests as we could. So,
well, I certainly hope that the experience of getting into your event is going to be easier than it's been for some in sporting events over the last few weeks, because I've heard some horror stories. But anyway,
I can't imagine when I'm a big Celtics guy. I can't imagine what that's going to be like. So
you're going to have to get in line at 4:00 to get to a 7:00 game, right? I think that's how, until they get to the point where they're going to, I don't know, flat, how we used to do the temperature check thing was really quick, but that's not just the only way you could need to be screened these days. So
it will create a whole new industry. Somebody will come up with some idea.
And we know just the law firm to represent them. All right, Frank Segall from Burns and Levinson. Great to see you, sir. See you again on Tuesday. Thank you so much. We're going to continue with our tourism and cannabis discussion. Don't go away. Green Rush Live continues after this.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So I think there's one very important difference between me and most of my team members and other cannabis accounting firms, especially outsourced cannabis accounting firms. With a lot of the other firms, you're going to find bookkeepers or folks that were accountants for their entire career, but they were junior accountants. I've spent most of my career alongside CFOs at public companies with thousands of employees, public companies. So much of my career wasn't spent in the debits and credits. It was spent with the CFO, CEO, COO of large public companies, working on strategy, working on planning and big initiatives, working on projects such as mergers and integrations. So that high level experience, along with being able to do the debits and credits and having members of my team that also have fairly senior experience and also members of the team that are junior and can do the bookkeeping at a little bit lower cost than some of the people with the experience, gives our clients a much broader depth of experience than a lot of the other firms where you're hiring someone that is just a bookkeeper and can't help with the strategy side of it, or someone that's been an executive for a long time and can only help with the strategy but can't help with the hands-on.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. And when I started Pro Cannabis Media 2 years ago, I wanted to make sure the cannabis industry had a professional outlet to share their stories in their own words. Now, since it all started with my podcast In the Weeds 3 years ago, I've done over 250 interviews. I've met some incredible people with a shared passion for this amazing plant. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard the line, cannabis has saved my life, Cannabis has changed my life. Well, now it's your turn. We want to give you a chance to tell your own story. It doesn't even need to be related to the medicinal power of this incredible plant. Just to give you a little incentive, we will pick 5 stories to share on our live Green Rush show on Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern. If we share your story, you automatically get one of our t-shirts with that closing line I use all the time, "It's a whole new world of weed." But as the legendary Billy Mays used to say, that's not all. One of those finalists will win one of these really cool full-story cannabis storage units. It's a great way to store your cannabis in their food-grade aluminum containers. It's award-winning, child-proof, smell-proof, and has a solid contemporary design. It's a $220 value, but you can win one if we pick your story and feature it on our show. Yes, we will pick one of those 5 finalists, and they will receive this $220 value absolutely free. Now, we ask you to keep your story to under 90 seconds on video and less than 500 words in text. So come out of the cannabis closet and tell us your story, and you could win with yourstory.com. Just go on to procannabismedia.com and sign up today. You might even join us on one of our shows.
Difference is building a solution for that individual, not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be.
All right, welcome back to another hour of Green Rush Live. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. We do this cannabis business talk show every Friday afternoon on the Pro Cannabis Media Network. I'm the founder of the Pro Cannabis Media Network, and I'm always joined by my good friend and colleague,
David Rabinovitz.
That's David over there.
That's
and he'll
me.
be
I get my
presenting.
one line.
That's right. He'll be presenting at NECAN in New Jersey and Atlantic City next weekend. David and I will both be in the state of New Jersey for next Friday's edition of Green Rush Live as we continue to connect the cannabis industry from coast to coast. And we're doing that even as we speak about cannabis tourism on this week's, the next hour on this program. And we welcome in Sean Roby from Bud and Breakfast and Robert Mahan from Illinois. Let's start with Sean Roby because that was such a nice tribute, Robert, that you just gave. Sean, tell us a little bit about Bud and Breakfast and how you earned your reputation as one of the premier voices in the cannabis tourism industry.
Well, I think we were in the first spot that legalized. That helped, being in Colorado, launching in 2013. We just saw a need for, travelers that when they get to their destination, they don't want to have to try to find cannabis when they get there. So why not start a Bud and Breakfast and have the cannabis waiting for them? So basically, we're an online travel website for cannabis enthusiasts around the world.
What's the name of the website? Bud and Breakfast.
Budandbreakfast.com. Yeah.
Budandbreakfast.com. And Robert, what's your story in Illinois and how did you learn about Sean?
Yeah, well, it was back when Illinois started the process for legalization. I think it was way back in 2012. We didn't own a bed and breakfast at the time. We were in large lodging in Chicago. And then we've been here, we've had Aldrich Guest House since 2014. And then as everything started coming closer and closer, we said, hey, this is something that we're passionate about, that we agree with. We want to be able to incorporate this into Aldrich Guest House. So we started doing lots and lots of research, calling a lot of other small lodging that's cannabis friendly, got lots and lots of feedback from them. And here we are, the first and still only cannabis friendly bed and breakfast in Illinois.
Now, let's walk us through, again, both David and I are in the Massachusetts area. Yes, we've had adult use legalization since 2018, 2016, the voters voted in. You guys know how that works. It takes a few years before the regulation all kicks in. But I show up at, I go on to Bud and Breakfast and I make a reservation somewhere. When I walk in the inn, is the weed available to me? Are you handing it to me in a little gift box? Is it wrapped? Is it on my bed pillow?
Cannabis. It really depends on the accommodation. Some are 420 friendly. You get there and they're fine with you smoking outside on the deck, and there's a dispensary around the corner. However, the ones that really, really do well are the ones that are all inclusive. You get there, there's a bud bar, maybe a cannabis yoga class, maybe a sushi and joint rolling class, a CBD infused massage. We have a zip line in Napa where you're zip lining over the cannabis and the Pinot Noir. I mean, people are getting really creative. Those places are booked out quite a bit. The ones that go, to the full extreme.
The whole experience.
That sounds cool.
That's the point.
Yeah.
It's the point.
It really is. Robert, what goes on at the at your location at the Aldrich Guest House?
Sure. At Aldrich Guest House, Illinois' laws are more restrictive than most of the other states that adult use is legalized. So we're not allowed to provide it. We're not allowed to sell it. And thankfully, there's a dispensary a 7-minute walk away from us. So that works out really well. So we've been able to incorporate cannabis use in a similar way. We're one of only 7 bed and breakfasts in Galena that have liquor licenses. So we've been able to incorporate it in a very similar way to where if you want to consume, you can. If you don't, that's okay. We actually built what we call the potting shed. It's on the side of the house. It's a 12 by 12 structure, and there's couches and a little snack bar. There's water over there. There's TV and Wi-Fi. Douglas, my husband, who runs a bed and breakfast with me, myself and a friend did the electric, the insulation, the drywall, the HVAC, the flooring. There's, like I said, TV and Wi-Fi. So it's more like a tiny house as opposed to a shed. So it's one of those things that gives people who want to consume a place to do it without inconveniencing those who don't, and vice versa. So if you're consuming, you don't. Sometimes, as a cannabis consumer, I think one of the things you're always aware of is, am I inconveniencing someone? I don't want to, just like I don't want someone to inconvenience me, I don't want to inconvenience them. So this is that great balance between the two.
And you're speaking to having multiple rooms in your place and having different guests at the same time, right?
Right. Yep. We have 5 guest rooms altogether, and the potting shed it's a public space. So it's kind of like the parlor would be, or the library, the dining room. Anyone can go over there. It's not a sleeping room. It's more of a public area.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for a lot of our bed and breakfasts, that it is just a one room or one house. We do have a lot of inns, but I think that when people come to a bed and breakfast in general, I think that we get rid of the awkward factor. It's not, you're not going to go up to an Airbnb host and be like, hey, can I get some cannabis? It's we get rid of that. You know what you're getting into when you go to a bed and breakfast.
Yeah. I love the all-inclusive. And, we really did try. I get inundated with requests to go to Negril on a regular basis in Jamaica. Okay. Sure. And, that island, as you know, is a reputation. The Rastafarians, it's a religious thing for them. Sure. I visited Jamaica many times in the past. I've never been to Negril. We really wanted, but I love the idea of that all-inclusive experience, so that it includes infused dinners. You mentioned yoga. There are a lot of activities that can be incorporated into the cannabis experience that just enlightens and enhances your visit and your relaxation while you are away from wherever you are.
That's the point.
Hey, Robert, did I hear Galena, Illinois? Is that where it is?
Yeah, Galena, Illinois. It's in the northwest corner of the state, right up by Wisconsin and Iowa, right on the Mississippi River.
Yeah,
It's beautiful.
I actually took geography as a kid, so I actually know that. But is there a social club in that city too?
For cannabis?
Yeah,
There's not.
one.
There's not yet. I wish there was, because it would be amazing. And to kind of touch base on your all-inclusive sort of a thing, we on April 20th, we had a big 2-day celebration for our guests, and we're doing it again on November 19th and 20th. Like you said, there's a lot of activities that can be kind of enhanced. So we're having yoga, we're having a candle or a scent workshop, which is kind of neat, to work with the senses, coffee cuppings, which is pretty cool. We're doing a felting class to create a little character, and then a couple of sessions, both at 420 each day, and then a catered dinner, all of which we're working with the dispensary and with the CBD shop to pair strains and stuff. So to kind of touch base with, or to kind of connect to that, it is quite popular to have those all-inclusive and kind of enhancements when it works together with cannabis.
Yeah, I actually like to pay to see David Rabinovitz do a yoga class.
I haven't done a yoga class in
Never.
over 20 years, and I don't want to right now. That was painful.
Well, if you do, make sure to smoke some cannabis beforehand.
Right, because it loosens you up, right? Come on, it definitely does, right?
Or you could just meditate the whole time while everyone else does yoga.
So that means downward dog is actually a cannabis cultivar. It's not really twisting your body.
Exactly.
Guys, I gotta play the not the devil's advocate, because I don't like to do that, but I do always want to ask the questions that I think a lot of the public, we're all going through this pandemic right now. The tourism industry took a horrible hit. Everybody took a hit for the most part. The cannabis industry, deemed essential, seemed to thrive during the pandemic. We know about some of the stats about how usage has increased and sales have increased. But how did you survive during the last 18 months, and how big a hit did your tourism effort take? We'll start with Sean on that.
Okay, well, I mean, for us, it was every month we were, tripling basically. And when COVID came, it literally went from everything up and to the right to dead stop. I mean, it was like nothing. I mean, we were like, uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
I mean,
right.
It was a few months of definite nail biting, and yeah, it was really scary. And then what we saw slowly start happening was over the summer, people were just, I don't know if it was pent up or what was happening. I mean, this was like right when the vaccines were starting to roll. We started seeing a lot of domestic travel where people weren't getting on airplanes, but they were getting in their cars and driving from state to state. And then, within that, a lot of our bed and breakfasts would do like enhanced cleaning protocols, where they would either subscribe to some sort of enhanced cleaning that was, being kind of told to them by the CDC, or or if they didn't, then they would put space in between the bookings. So it would be like 72 hours to let, they would clean, but they weren't adhering to this advanced cleaning protocol. And I think within that, people started getting, besides the pent up, and then more confident. And then when the vaccines kind of started rolling, it literally just exploded again. I mean, the people were just, again, pent up. People like to travel, people like to go. And it was amazing. I mean, it literally went from dead stop to way beyond where we even were before COVID. So it's back. I mean, even with the Delta variant, we're seeing an explosion in travel, and in cannabis travel specifically.
Yeah, I think people, especially those that are smart enough to get the vaccination, okay, and get it done already, just feel that like freedom. It's like, goodness gracious. It's how I felt when I went to face-to-face cannabis conventions over the last couple of months. It was like, thank goodness I can hug somebody again, even though they've got a mask on and I'm indoors. I just felt a relief, right?
Yeah. It turned into the year of yes. I mean, it was just, all right.
Yes.
It's been a great year.
Well, I think MJ BizCon is going to be like, I think we're all very apprehensive, but I think once everybody gets there and it's more spread out and people are going to meet outside instead of inside, and the meetings afterwards are going to take place outside, I think it'll be a lot more comfortable. But Robert, how much of an effect did the pandemic play in your world, in your tourism world?
Yeah, the first 9 weeks when there was no non-essential travel allowed, we think you have to come to Galena to take a vacation, but the government didn't necessarily agree. But we had 9 weeks with no guests, and they were the most lonely, most terrifying 9 weeks I think that we've ever had. But it was about May 25th, 2020, that guests were able to come again. And that weekend we were full, and we didn't anticipate being full until sometime in 2021. We were thinking summer 2021 that, people would finally start being comfortable. But honestly, since May 2020, we've been setting records every single month with occupancy and revenue. And the city of Galena has been setting records every month with hotel motel tax collections, with retail tax collections. And I think that that's one of those big benefits of being a small lodging property in a small town. I think a lot of travelers feel comfortable, like Sean mentioned, with driving. I think drivers are realizing that there's a lot more small destinations nearby that people have never seen before, and they feel comfortable in small towns. Galena has 3,200 residents. We get over 1 million visitors per year, but people feel comfortable coming to a small town and staying at a small bed and breakfast that has 5 guest rooms, where you're around 10 people, as opposed to when we were in large lodging in Chicago before we came here in 2014. You've got 1,000 hotel rooms. There's 2,000 or 3,000 people in the hotel. You're standing on Michigan Avenue looking at the Bean with 2,000 of your closest friends. And I think that people feel much more comfortable in small lodging as compared to large lodging. So small lodging and small towns have done much, much better. We're well over our 2019 numbers by about 150%, which is stunning. And honestly, part of that is us being cannabis friendly. Our numbers of guests that do utilize a potting shed have climbed to about 30 to 35% of our guests do partake. They do pop over there and they do take advantage of it. So that's been a good piece of it. And I think another piece of it too is that being cannabis friendly has opened us up to a much more diverse audience. We're getting a lot more diversity in age and and I say demographic, but I mean more of a mentality. We're getting people who are much more active, who do like to incorporate cannabis into their travels. We're getting more racial diversity. We're getting more age diversity. More income diversity, and it's been fantastic because just kind of the stereotype of a bed and breakfast is that you're going to have some mandatory fun. You're going to have an innkeeper breathing down your neck. You're going to have baby dolls and doilies and wallpaper that's covered in flowers, and you don't find that here. And I think that a lot of potential travelers, when they're looking, even if they don't consume, we've noticed that there's a lot of people who maybe wouldn't normally stay at a bed and breakfast that do stay here because they know that they're not going to be judged. The kind of the thing that resonates again and again in a lot of our communications with our guests is that we're here, we're laid back, we're easygoing, we're professional, we're intuitive, but we're still unobtrusive because we want you to be able to relax and unwind and most importantly, be yourself. And I think that when people see that, hey, this is a cannabis friendly place, they're probably not going to be busy judging me. I'm going to be able to be who I am and have a good time.
Right. And boy, isn't that refreshing? That's all I got to say. Right.
Yes. And in 2021, it's insane. You would think that, having 10 strangers sitting together, having breakfast, out on the street and porch, that there would be the media would have you believe that everyone's at each other's throat and arguing.
Easy. Traditional media, not pro cannabis.
Traditional media. No,
okay,
not pro cannabis media. But they would have you believe that, everyone's arguing and talking about their differences where, and it sounds a little bit maybe hokey, but it's not true. People believe in 99% that they agree in what they believe. And it's been great being able to see that camaraderie, that humanity coming out even stronger than before.
Yeah, well, collective gratitude.
Yep.
Sure.
Correct. Yeah. Collective gratitude and the Rastafarian that I had an opportunity to speak with a couple of years ago talked about it is about the plant. The plant brings people from different backgrounds and together. You have think about it. You have something in common. It's not dissimilar. I'm a sports guy, guys. So it's not really dissimilar from sports. Okay. Sports, you look at the Olympics every 4 years, the World Cup every 4 years. You have something in common: competition, athletic performance. That's why you should embrace people that don't look like you or act like you, because they're different. Let's find a common ground. That's how we're going to survive as a humanity. Sean, I'm guessing you relate to this, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's brings odd fellows together. I mean, I've sat in smoking circles with people that I never would have ever connected with. And the cannabis it brings people together. It's like, as Bob Marley said, cannabis is the healing of the nations, right? I mean, it is.
And I just wish the nations would pay attention to Bob more. Okay. That's right. Yes, David, you have your hand up. I remember you.
You and I need to figure out a tell. So if I got a question, I can jump in here. But Robert, let me start with you. How many beds do you have? How many rooms?
We have 5 guest rooms, so we're able to have 10 guests altogether.
Wow.
By the way, David, you took notes on him. He said 5 rooms. You're now covering old material.
But I was doing a little bit of math because I was thinking about. He said you got 3,200 people in the town, and you bring in 1 million visitors a year.
Right.
If they stay for only one day, Jimmy, that's like 320 people per resident. I mean, that town I would think that they must be almost like a ski town where their economy is based on
it reminds me of that.
tourism, right?
Yeah, it's very tourist based, and during the 9 weeks without any travel, it was great because the town did come together to support. We've got 130 shops and restaurants on our main street. It's a half mile long. We call it the hell of a half mile. Chicago's got the magnificent mile. We've got a hell of a half mile. Yeah, come on. But it was really amazing to see, how the community came together to help keep people afloat, knowing that this was going to pass and that it was going to get better. And from the beginning of the pandemic, I had talked to one of the newspapers in Dubuque, just across the Mississippi River, and he said, are you worried, that your business is never going to come back? I said, no, I think small lodging and small towns are going to come roaring back, and they have. And that 1 million visitors per year, that's pre-COVID. I would say that in the last year, and once 2021 is up, we're going to far exceed 1 million visitors.
Wow.
That's great. So I've got a friend who grew up in Newton, Massachusetts, ended up in Manhattan, worked in the securities world for a while, then got up and did some other things. I think they just sold their tiny little studio condo in Manhattan, and they bought a bed and breakfast in Elliott, Maine. And this is an old building. Like, this thing must go back to the 1700s, because they're taking it apart and finding all kinds of wild stuff. And he's intending to open up a cannabis-friendly inn. So for anybody who's listening, and hopefully Andy's out there listening, because I texted him a little earlier, what advice, and Robert, let's start with you, because you got that nice little small town experience. He's got they're redoing this bed and breakfast. They got a barn. They're hoping to hold events in the barn as soon as they can get all the bat dung cleaned out of there. And the pretty good sized field right next to them. What would be your advice to somebody getting in the business?
Yeah, well, it's funny because a lot of guests like to say, we're going to retire. We're going to open a bed and breakfast. It's always been our dream. And my first question is always, well, why? Why do you want to be an innkeeper? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is, well, I love baking and he loves entertaining. Then host a dinner party. Don't open a bed and breakfast. There's a lot more that goes into it than that. That's a tiny part. There's a lot that goes on that you don't see. So we've had this question a lot, and we've actually had other inns call us and ask about becoming cannabis friendly and what they should do and those things. And my answer is always, and this is my answer for everything: do what's true to you. And that actually has stopped the conversations with other people who are looking at becoming cannabis friendly, because I say, is it something that you enjoy, that you feel passionate about, that's true to you? Are you comfortable answering the questions and having discussions about cannabis? Are you comfortable? If you have staff, we don't, but are you comfortable in training your staff to be aware, to potentially have to tell someone, hey, you can't light up there, go over here, or this is the different methods of consumption, and this is the different products that are available. So just having that knowledge. And the question I ask is, why do you want to be cannabis friendly? And so far, everyone I've talked to says, because I want to get more bookings. I want more people to stay with me. And I tell them that's the worst reason, because I think a stoner can smell bullcrap a mile away. You know, if it's not true, if it's not genuine, don't do it. We do actually do, we're actually starting a consulting for aspiring innkeepers. So tell your friend to give us a call. We're happy to chat with him. But kind of the thing that we tell everyone is, you know, have your definition of success, you know, and if your definition of success is to be a billionaire, then there's a way to get there. If your definition of success is to break even and have fun, then that's a great way to do it too. It sounds like he's got so many awesome opportunities. I wish we had a big piece of land, because I would love to bring a cannabis festival to Galena. I think it would just be just fantastic. Unfortunately, the laws in Illinois, there's no consumption on any property that's owned in part by a municipality. Well, there goes all the big outdoor parks, because you can't smoke inside. So you have to have an outdoor spot for smoking. So it sounds like your friend has a great setup for hosting, you know, potentially medium or large, you know, events for the cannabis industry, especially if there's able to be consumption on site. You know, so those sorts of things. And then even hosting, because one of the big things are cannabis friendly weddings as well, at something like the venue that your friend has, where instead of a bartender, there's a bud tender. How awesome would that be? You know, we're on half an acre altogether, so we don't have enough space for that. Plus, again, with the way the laws are in Illinois, it does limit a lot of what we're able to do. But I would say for your friend, whatever's true to them, gosh, the sky's the limit, you know. But always, our question to ourselves before we make any big decisions is this something true to us? Is this something that we're passionate about? Is this something that's going to be real for us, as opposed to just a way to make a buck?
Sean, how many bud and breakfast inns do theme-based weekend retreats? Because that seems to be another thing that I'm starting to see more and more, whether it's a murder mystery or yoga retreat, or maybe it's a trade, like a nurse's retreat, something like that.
Sure. I mean, I would say now it's becoming more common, and probably more just everybody's kind of doing it. I would say like 90% of the people on our site that really are full on bud and breakfast are doing some sort of themed, you know, whether it be bringing in a microdosed infused chef, or doing some sort of tour, dispensary tour. Farm tours now up in Northern California are becoming really common. Jamaica, you get there and you go into the cannabis field and you walk through and get to touch it, and, you know, the visceral experience. You know, and even in Denver, I mean, the thing about cannabis is there is no shoulder season, and it's really, I think, going to be bigger than wine tourism, because it's everywhere. It's in an industrial park in Denver, or it's in a beautiful vineyard in Napa. I mean, it's everywhere you can go, you know. Right.
And I'm guessing while you're not selling the cannabis on the property, you make it available, and bringing your own is encouraged.
Most hosts end up just kind of paying it forward, as it were. I think that a lot of people say they come to Denver and they're super excited, and even though there's cannabis waiting for them at the bud and breakfast, the first thing they want to do is go to a dispensary, buy way too much weed and edibles and whatever, and then they have 3 days to consume it, and they can't. And so they leave it with the host, and then the host just pays it forward like that. So it's really kind of a win-win. There's no output costs. You know?
I love that.
And you're allowed to, in most states, gift. Yeah, cannabis, and that's obviously the legality of it.
Right. A writer asked me recently, you know, can you gift cannabis? I said, not only can you gift it, it's encouraged. Right. The industry encourages it.
It's a beautiful gift.
It's a beautiful gift. Exactly right. Hey, guys, we're going to take a break. We've got a couple more people, I think, that are in our waiting room that we are expecting to come in. If you'd like to stick around, we'd love to have you stick around to the top of the hour. Totally up to you. If you've got busy customers or you got to get on another call, we totally respect that too. But if you can hang in there, please do. And if you have to leave, we give you an excuse. You could give your plug now for how to find you. Do you want to do that? Or can you stick around?
Well, I could stick around for a little bit, but I'd probably need to leave about midway through. So why don't I just give my plug now? It's www.budandbreakfast.com.
It's about as easy as it gets. Bud and breakfast.
just
When
spelled out.
when Isabel told me that she tracked down the bud and breakfast guy, I was like, yes, yes. Robert, can you stick around for a little while or not?
Yep, we can stick around. I'll be with you.
All right, terrific. We're going to take a break. We come back on the other side with another twist on the cannabis tourism trade that's evolving, and this includes tours of manufacturing facilities, like where they make their edibles. We'll continue with Green Rush Live after this. Don't go away.
Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be.
Difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the cost low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. And when I started Pro Cannabis Media 2 years ago, I wanted to make sure the cannabis industry had a professional outlet to share their stories in their own words. Now, since it all started with my podcast In the Weeds 3 years ago, I've done over 250 interviews. I've met some incredible people with a shared passion for this amazing plant. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard the line, cannabis has saved my life, cannabis has changed my life. Well, now it's your turn. We want to give you a chance to tell your own story. It doesn't even need to be related to the medicinal power of this incredible plant. Just to give you a little incentive, we will pick 5 stories to share on our live Green Rush show on Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern. If we share your story, you automatically get one of our t-shirts with that closing line I use all the time, it's a whole new world of weed. But as the legendary Billy Mays used to say, that's not all. One of those finalists will win one of these really cool full-story cannabis storage units. It's a great way to store your cannabis in their food-grade aluminum containers. It's award-winning, child-proof, smell-proof, and has a solid contemporary design. It's a $220 value, but you can win one if we pick your story and feature it on our show. Yes, we will pick one of those 5 finalists, and they will receive this $220 value absolutely free. Now, we ask you to keep your story to under 90 seconds on video and less than 500 words in text. So come out of the cannabis closet and tell us your story, and you could win with yourstory.com. Just go on to procannabismedia.com and sign up today. You might even join us on one of our shows.
And
Welcome
we're
back to Green Rush Live, the final half hour for Friday afternoon. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. A reminder, a program note, as we like to say in the TV biz. Following this program is our weekly Weed Talk News show. We're talking about the Safe Banking Act amended to the defense budget and whether or not that might move the needle towards something positive coming out of Washington, D.C. Every Friday, I am joined by my good friend and colleague,
David Rabinovitz.
There he is. And a reminder, David will be presenting at NECAN in New Jersey and Atlantic City next weekend. Green Rush Live will be, not that it's going to matter to anybody who watches this show on a regular basis, but David and I will be both in New Jersey next weekend, covering that show, following that show, and actually listening to David present the business and political history of cannabis in the United States. We're joined by a new friend of Pro Cannabis Media, Derek D'Ambrosio from Cape Cod Cannabis, out on the outer Cape of Cape Cod. For anybody who knows how Massachusetts looks on a map, that little arm that sticks out is Cape Cod. And that's where Derek, are you there? Is that what I see behind you, Derek?
Yeah, so I am at the Chatham Bars and Grill right now. So
I love it there.
Beautiful Cape Cod. This is just the tip of the iceberg of
That's
what
right.
to expect
And,
when you
and
come
for-
down here.
That's right. And just so the Illinois and Colorado members who are on this panel, that would be the Atlantic Ocean behind him, guys.
Thanks for that.
We're gonna need a bigger boat.
You're going to need a bigger boat. Exactly. Derek, since this is a new audience, why don't you give us a little background on who you are, how you started Cape Cod Cannabis out in Wellfleet, and what you're up to.
So my name is Derek D'Ambrosio, and I'm a cannabis executive, travel industry entrepreneur, a mentor, an investor, and a consultant. I've been selling cannabis since I was 15 years old. I got into it because my mother had cancer. My wife has lupus. So both of the most important women in my family use cannabis to help them get through the day. My mother's passed away, unfortunately, but I am the general manager for Cape Cod Cannabis. We're the largest adult use dispensary on Cape Cod, Massachusetts. We have the most educated staff and the best menu in the Cape, according to Weed Maps and Google reviews. I also own Elite Limo, which is a VIP chauffeur service that has black cars all around the world. We have a Rolls-Royce Ghost in Boston, and in New York, in Miami, Vegas, pretty much wherever you want to go. I have black cars, SUVs, or exotic vehicles for the VIP clientele. And I'm doing some cannabis tourism, which is why we're here today. So I yield the mic to you, Jimmy. You're a legend. Thank you for having me on here. I'm honored to be here with in the presence of the rest of you guys, David and Dan. Fantastic. So I can't wait to go explore your establishments as well.
So I'm going to turn it right over to Sean and Robert in a second, because, have you thought about engaging a local limo company? Not that Derek would drive out to Illinois to Colorado, but maybe in your neck of the woods to have some kind of tourism activity, tours of fields, manufacturing dispensaries, whatever. Does any of that come up, and is any of that in any of your brochures? Robert, I'll start with you.
Yeah, that's definitely one of those things that we look forward to. Right now, Galena has one dispensary about a 7-minute walk away from Aldrich Guest House. And there's another one in East Dubuque, which is about a 15-minute drive. So other than that, there's no cannabis facilities anywhere within an hour and a half of the destination. The nice thing is the city council, when the state legalized everything, they did vote to approve not only dispensing, but also growing and processing facilities. There's been several people who've expressed interest and have worked with the Zoning Board of Appeals to get the zoning approved for different growing and processing facilities. So once those come, that's a shoe-in. We've got all the structure on our end ready to go to promote the program and stuff to guests. Right now, we're kind of waiting for the destination. So waiting for the processors and the growers, and and as soon as that happens, we're on board with it.
There you go. And Sean, Colorado, I'm guessing, you guys, one of the first in the nation and all that. Do we do tours of facilities, growing facilities, manufacturing facilities? What goes on out in the Boulder area? Anything like that?
Pretty much all of that. Yeah, for sure. And we have an activity section on our site that we work with and form strategic alliances with companies where, dispensaries where we'll do exclusive tours to their dispensary when, because we have bed and breakfasts all over the world. So we have companies that we work with everywhere, in every city, every state, every rec state pretty much, and every province, internationally that is legal or going that way. We build alliances like that. And when guests come to that area, they know the terrain. So we have the guests go with them for, their activities when they get there, for sure.
Jimmy, we have in this area, we have these paint bars where people can go in and they'll paint a picture on an evening over a few hours with instructions, and a lot of women, and they'll bring wine and that type of thing. Is there any sort of business like that where either of you are located, where, for example, roll your own weed while you're doing sort of
there is. It's called Puff Pass Paint. And it's in Denver. It's huge. I mean, that's one of the main things people go do. It enhances your creativity. So why not get a paintbrush in your hand and go,
Derek, any way that you do a painting excursion? You do anything if anybody pays for your limo, right?
Yeah, so we have ground transportation covered. Basically, you pick the vehicle you want, you pick how many people you have, and we'll take you wherever you want to go and do whatever you want. And I have vehicles all around the world. So
does that include, like, if I wanted to rent a limo with a bunch of guys and we just wanted to cruise the national shoreline of Cape Cod, a couple hours in the limo, you provide that, right?
Exactly. So basically, a black car, it handles about 2 people. An SUV will handle about 6 people. And then we have sprinters and party buses and even motor coaches. So if you want a tour bus, I can fit about 50 people in a tour bus. And we'll take you anywhere you want. We'll bring you anywhere you want to go. And with our connections and the VIP people that we have in our circle, we'll give you some experiences that you can't get anywhere else. So for the cannabis industry in Massachusetts, I'll give you the full adult Willy Wonka experience. You can go see the chocolate factory. You can see where they grow, where they manufacture some of the best products to manufacture in the industry. And then you come by my dispensary and we'll give you a green carpet tour. We'll be able to give you a swag bag. You can get all the party supplies you need. So we don't care if it's basically touring lighthouses, wineries, cannabis dispensaries, anywhere in the world. I have you covered with Elite Limo. It is a private service, so you have to go on Instagram and find me through there or LinkedIn. And we do have airport transportation for like your average person, where we'll be able to pick you up in any major city in the world, get you from the airport to your hotel, and get you around the city. So whether it's a point-to-point transportation or it's an hourly service, I've got all your ground transportation needs covered.
I look forward to working with you.
There you go. Make sure you two guys connect online afterwards for sure, because I think again we talk about the socialization aspect of this plant, and I'm sure many of us have sat around circles of strangers in the past, passing a joint or whatever, and but here and the one thing I really love is the entrepreneurial spirit of the people that are involved in the industry. So networking like this, meeting like this, obviously it's safe. You exchange contacts afterwards or through me or Isabel, whomever. And now the question I have is, okay, what's next? What are some of the ideas out there on the tourism side that still haven't been explored and that you think there is opportunity? Sean, you got some ideas? I'm sure you do.
Well, I just got back from Portugal and Spain and Germany, and Europe is really coming on strong now. So they're a bit behind, and everyone was kind of like looking at it like that it wasn't going to happen. But Germany really is starting to lead the way with this whole thing. And when I was in Portugal and Spain, there's social clubs all over Spain. They're popping up every day, more and more. And it's a provincial thing over there too. Like some places are good with it and other places aren't. It's kind of like cities like New York. Certain cities are not allowing dispensaries and other places are. And Portugal is following suit, and Germany is soon to go too. So I think our company is really looking at Europe now. And we have people on the ground over there now doing the work and kind of expanding that way. So that's kind of where we're at.
I want to ask Derek about social clubs because it's a question I asked Frank Segall from Burns and Levinson to ask Stephen Hoffman, who's going to have an opportunity to talk with the state commissioner on Tuesday at their annual State of Cannabis Industry Conference in Massachusetts. And, it's frustrating that the only social club is the private Summit Lounge in Worcester, Massachusetts right now. With so much land open on the Cape, doesn't it make sense that there's opportunities for outdoor social clubs on the Cape? I remember visiting Truro, and there's an outdoor bar there somewhere. They had open bands outside. I mean, it's outside, for crying out loud. Shouldn't you just be able to pass a joint?
So first of all, I have to say that coming from the music industry and dealing with the VIP clientele that I usually deal with, this is our world. Right. So Summit Lounge is one social club, and that is the one that the average person knows about.
Yeah.
But there are other ones out there too.
Yeah. Okay.
You just have to know the right people.
Like Derek.
I have allegedly. But
that's where you're legendary. Okay. Yeah.
If you know the right people, and let's say cannabis is your go-to way to relax, there are places and establishments that are 420 friendly. You just have to know the right people, and you have to have the money too. It's not for the average person. This is when it comes down to a members only private club. There are real members only clubs that you can be involved in, and you can live your life, do what you want. Now, we don't sell any cannabis in any of those clubs. It's BYOB. So as long as you're not breaking any laws,
right?
There are places that you can go and you can enjoy an infused meal. You can enjoy your adult use cannabis. If you're 21 and older and you're paying the membership fees, then there are establishments that are out there. Now, there should be more of them, and there should be available to the general population. But there's definitely places too. If you reach out to the right people, I'm sure you'll be able to find them. And I'm happy to help there. So if you go to Elite Limo, we might be able to drive you to some of those clubs and you'll be able to enjoy your experience.
We missed my birthday a few weeks ago, but every day is my birthday as far as I'm concerned. So we can we'll definitely connect. Robert, you have a built-in social club with your little man cave or weed cave that you got there, right?
Potting studio.
Yeah, the potting shed. It's one of those things that again, the law in Illinois, they wrote it really strict, and hopefully they'll be relaxing things as they realize that cannabis isn't the downfall of the world.
Right.
So it's one of those neat things because right now only our guests are allowed to use it. So if you're not staying at Aldrich Guest House, you're not allowed to use it because then we become a consumption lounge.
Right.
And I think you were mentioning that there were some consumption lounges. I think that there was one that opened up in Peoria, so a little bit downstate, and that was just this past week or a couple weeks ago. It was
a couple weeks ago because Margot Vaselli, who's our Illinois correspondent for We Talk News, told me, and I'm trying to get her to go down to the consumption lounge to do a story on it because we want to see it. We want to experience what is the legal consumption way that the laws allow, and until they loosen them up.
Well, and I think that that's where the big potential growth is when it comes to tourism, is that as even our destination marketing organization, Visit Galena, they're not hesitant to promote it, but I think that they're uncomfortable in knowing how to balance it because there is only one dispensary, there is only one cannabis-friendly bed and breakfast in the whole state. So I think that a lot of the destination marketing organizations are kind of getting their feet under them, and I think that the COVID pandemic has delayed things a little bit because all the DMOs, their budgets have gone crazy. What their marketing has gone all kind of haywire. But I think that as those things start coming back together, and as more processing facilities and grow facilities start opening up. I think especially Galena being right next to Wisconsin and Iowa, it almost becomes the Napa of the state. You've got all those out-of-state people in prohibition states where all they've got to do is drive a couple of hours and they can have this amazing experience for the equivalent of what you would do if you went to wine country. And I think that that's where a lot of the big stuff is going to come up. And I don't always like to say that cannabis should be treated the same way as alcohol, but when it comes to, there's how many wine festivals, there's wine festival after wine festival after wine festival. We have a whiskey weekend in Galena where there's no limit on how many whiskeys you can try, and there's like 150 vendors. But we're concerned with having an outdoor consumption, festival. Well, and I think it's because people aren't yet comfortable with it. People don't yet know that it's okay. And I think that that's one of the neat things about being a small bed and breakfast in a small town, coming out as being the first and only cannabis-friendly bed and breakfast in the state. I think that it kind of gives some legitimacy, a little bit more of that. Cannabis isn't just one of those giggly things that you teeter about, and it's a legit substance, and it's a legit tourism driver.
Right. Derek, you're not going ha now, are you?
Robert, how
go ahead, David.
Within your community, like how are there people who are against what you're doing?
I don't think that there's people against it. There's people who don't understand. When we took over the bed and breakfast 7 years ago, the previous owners sent out an email telling everyone, that Douglas and Robert are taking over. They're the new owners, they're the new innkeepers, and we got emails that these people, previous guests, didn't realize they were sending them to us. I thought they were sending to the previous innkeepers, saying, a same-sex couple, God will not bless. I remember seeing that one. Come on, gee whiz. And then when we renovated the place and took away all the crazy wallpaper and the doilies and baby dolls and fake flowers, people said, guests aren't going to love it. People are going to hate it. That's why they come, is for the old school stuff. I don't think so. And it's worked out well. When we got our liquor license, people said, I won't come because I don't like to be around liquor. That's fine, but this is something that we're going to do, right? And
stay away.
When we became cannabis friendly, we sent an email out to all of our guests because we didn't want any surprises. We didn't want anyone to show up and say, "Oh gosh, I'm against this. I'm not comfortable around it." And we did have some people that said, "You've ruined it for us. We're never coming back." And my response was, I appreciate that. Thanks for letting us know. But if you ever have any questions, let us know. If you want another place to stay in Galena, call us. We'll make a recommendation for you. But if you ever change your mind, you're always welcome back. And I think that with the guests that we have had, that we've been able to have conversations with, other than via email, a lot of it is they have questions. They have, reefer madness in their head. They've got DARE. They've got all this prohibition stuff that you can't blame them for thinking it, because that's what they've been told their whole lives. So I think that as more accurate information comes out, as there gets to be a critical mass of cannabis consumers that kind of come out, and people say, "Oh wait, my friend, she does it. Oh, that old lady down the street, she smokes weed. Oh, I guess it's maybe not so bad." And they've been doing this their whole lives, and I think that's where. So I wouldn't say we've met anyone against it. We've had people that have been confused by it, who have had questions. And I think that's where most of the aggression sometimes comes from, is, people try to say, no, that thought is wrong. That feeling is wrong. No, it's not wrong to think cannabis is wrong. You're welcome to do that, but let me help understand why, and then maybe we can talk about it without trying to change your mind.
Right. And Sean, I know you have to run, but I do want to ask one more question about Bud and Breakfast on your site. Do you point out what places do infused breakfasts as well?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's usually in the description right there. When you go to a place, it's going to be probably in the first sentence. Whether a lot of places are doing microdosed, and they're knowledgeable. They're not just winging it, which is good.
No. Trust me. Derek knows this about me. You don't want to wing it, and you want to make sure you read the label and know exactly how many milligrams you're putting in at all times.
Well, guys, we've all unfortunately experienced that.
Yes, we have. That's right. All right. Hey, Derek, final thoughts as we wrap things up here on tourism. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to hang out and talk with Angela, but you can tell her that we still love her, and we love her products, which are in my refrigerator, and they are properly labeled. I'll have you know. I know the difference between 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams, and 25 milligrams per piece. Thank you. Make sure you check the labels, people. Okay. Everybody's laughing because we've all been there, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Hey, it was fun to talk about this. I love this subject, and I think that this is social clubs and tourism is the upside that is going to define the cannabis space in the next 10 years, with or without legalization, because it's entrepreneurs like you guys have figured out ways to do it the right way. And I salute you all, and I wish you all the best. And Derek, you and I are definitely going to get together soon for a weekend, and I'm going to rent one of those limos for some friends. I guarantee you that.
I'm ready too.
Who doesn't want to come down and see all of this beautifulness?
That's exactly right. There's no Outer Cape is the real Cape as far as I'm concerned. All right. So Derek D'Ambrosio and Sean Roby from Bud and Breakfast, Robert Mahan from the Aldrich Guest House in Illinois. Thank you all for joining us here on Friday afternoon. David, make sure you work on your presentation. The Professor Young is going to be looking at your work and critiquing you. I expect great things from you in next week in New Jersey.
We will deliver, Jimmy.
All right. Appreciate it. So for everybody here at Pro Cannabis Media, again, thank you so much for watching Green Rush Live. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Stay tuned for Weed Talk News, and we'll see you next week in the Garden State of New Jersey. Have a good one, everybody. But again, sort of, this time attached to the defense budget. So now what? Plus, a former mayor from Massachusetts gets sentenced to jail for bribery in a pay-for-a-weed license scam. And the 31st Annual Freedom Rally in Boston celebrates legalization and open consumption of cannabis.
That's Mount Michael Malta, named after the King of Pot. That's what we named it. It's that people get high up there every single day of the year.
And Cresco Labs acquires 3 Pennsylvania medical dispensaries for $90 million on Weed Talk News next. PCM TV is supported by Salient Systems, a world leader in video management security, and by Revolutionary Clinics, a medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Weed Talk News for this week. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. So have you told us your cannabis story yet? I mean, come on. Log on to the website. Come out of the cannabis closet. You could win a state-of-the-art cannabis container system from yourstory.com. Just tell us your story with a Y on our website, Pro Cannabis Media. Tell us what role cannabis has played in your life, and you could win with us and yourstory.com. Our top story this week comes from our nation's capital. You know, every time we interview Michael Correa, the Director of Government Relations from the NCIA, he always talks about the low-hanging fruit that is the Safe Banking Act. After all, it's passed the House 3 times before going nowhere in the Senate. Well, now it's passed a House committee again, but this time it's attached to the defense budget bill for 2022. This is how politics works in Washington, D.C. Now, even though the official safe banking bill actually passed the House in April of 2021, 321 to 101, it never even made it to a Senate committee. Now, pro-cannabis reformers are hoping that attaching the Safe Banking Act to the annual military defense budget bill should at least get a hearing in the Senate. We'll get the latest from the NCIA on Friday's Green Rush Live at 4 p.m. as we talk to Morgan Fox, the Director of Communication for the NCIA. Next up, What's going on with weed on Wall Street, you ask? Here's Deborah Borchardt from the Green Market Report. Deborah?
This is the business update for Weed Talk News from the Green Market Report. It was all about acquisitions this week. Michigan-based SkyMint is buying 315 Cannabis and also closing on a $70 million loan that is associated with Sundial Growers and an $8 million equity investment from Merida Capital. This deal is going to bring their workforce up to 730 employees with 27 locations. They expect an additional 18 plus locations in the 2021-2022 pipeline. Innovative Industrial Properties paid $1.35 million for a property in Missouri that is associated with Calyx Peak. They've agreed to provide reimbursement of up to $26 million for that. STEM Holdings, also known as Driven by STEM, is buying an Oregon-based extraction company called Artifact Extracts and 2 dispensaries. That deal is valued at $2.9 million. And this week, the SEC filed charges against 3 individuals and 1 issuer on a crowdfunding scheme for 2 cannabis companies that raised $2 million. They were supposed to buy and invest in cannabis properties, but they didn't do that. They siphoned the money off for personal use. In addition to that, the SEC charged the registered crowdfunding portal TrueCrowd and its CEO, who placed the offerings on the portal's platform. That's it for this week. I'm Deborah Borchardt from the Green Market Report for Weed Talk News.
Now, if you follow cannabis reform around the country like we do here on We Talk News, you know that Oklahoma has become a major player in the medicinal marketplace with over 8,600 grow licenses issued and over 2,000 dispensaries open. Now, a group of law enforcement and agriculture groups from that state sent a letter to the Oklahoma state regulators asking for a moratorium on granting any more growing licenses in that state. Right now, there are more growers of cannabis in Oklahoma than any other crop. Next week, we'll be introducing you to a new Cannacaster correspondent who lives in Oklahoma by the name of Dion Osborne. He covers the cannabis beat for the Black Wall Street Times, and continuing to cover Michigan for us, as always, is Rick Thompson, the executive director of NORML. And here's the Michigan Report for this week with Rick. Rick?
Hello again. This is the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson for Weed Talk News. Let's begin. Well, it might be a rainy week in Michigan, but the state is hot with mergers and acquisitions. Let's start with the most hated name in Michigan cannabis, SkyMint, who this week announced they are gobbling up competitor 315 Cannabis in a deal with an undisclosed price tag. SkyMint will now have 27 retail locations in Michigan, making them the top dogs in the state. 315 is a portfolio member of Meridian Holdings, the New York-based speculation firm. And Meridian is an important part of the SkyMint story, however, as they had to give $8 million to SkyMint in order to complete the sale. Does that sound backwards to you? It should, but it makes total sense when you understand SkyMint's cash-poor position and their desperate attempt at grabbing as much market share as they can get. SkyMint low-key announced a $70 million cash infusion this week from Tropics LP, further watering down SkyMint's actual ownership of their own company. Then why are they the most hated company in Michigan? Because they treat the state's medical marijuana program as a business obstacle needing to be removed instead of a longstanding part of Michigan's cannabis consumer culture. The second merger is an all-stock deal worth $545 million, and that brings Gage Cannabis Company from Detroit under the wing of TerraSend, which is the New York and Toronto-based company with an international reach. Earlier this year, Gage, which is the exclusive dealer in the state for the Cookies brand of products, announced plans to take Cookies into Canada. That would give the TerraSend Gage combo 23 stores in Michigan. This is a solid joining of 2 companies on the upswing as compared to SkyMint's failing and faltering approach. Gage had $32 million in cash on hand at the time of the sale, whereas SkyMint had to get paid before they could acquire 315. Gage has embraced social equity and harmony in Michigan, whereas SkyMint's My Way or the Highway approach has left them with champagne dreams on a beer budget. Michigan's market is expanding, and companies can make many mistakes and still remain profitable, but SkyMint's constant stream of public relations disasters has made them the laughing stock of the state. And that's it for the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson on Weed Talk News.
This weekend was the deadline for the state of New Jersey to be ready to handle the first wave of cannabis licenses. But now it looks like they will not be ready to start the first step in the legal adult use market. That deadline has been extended. The Garden State has already ruled out most of the popular categories of edibles, including brownies, cookies, and gummies. They're all out, but lozenges in New Jersey are in. Now that state will delay the acceptance of licenses again for a few more days. Once again, this shows that even in states where voters overwhelmingly approve the legalization of adult use of cannabis at the ballot box, the process of opening the market is always a slow one. Unless, of course, you do it like Arizona did and grant adult use licenses to already existing medical dispensary licensees holders. Just north of New Jersey, there's a state called New York. Perhaps you've heard of it. And that state also has an adult use program ready to go that they voted in through the legislature, but they too are slowly ramping up their program. Now at least there's a regulatory board to start those application processes and the licenses. Christina DiGiovanni from the Emerald Media Group has the latest from the Empire State. Christina?
I'm Christina DiGiovanni from Emerald Media Group, reporting for Weed Talk News. The state of New York this week is moving things along faster than anyone could have anticipated. Governor Hochul has already selected the final two individuals for the regulatory committee. They're Ruben McDaniel and Jessica Garcia. These two complete the committee, and now the state can move forward in the regulatory process for recreational cannabis. Many of us here in the state of New York are very excited for this news, and we cannot wait to see what comes next for the great state of New York. For Weed Talk News, I'm Christina DiGiovanni.
Every summer, most states hold an official fair with all sorts of agricultural contests like the best pies, best livestock, and now in California, the best weed. That's right. Details are still being worked out on whether the legacy market will be able to compete. But it looks like the California's State Fair will be the first state fair in the union to give out an award for best cannabis. With the rest of the news from Planet California, here's American Cannabis Report reporter Chris Smith. Chris?
I'm Christopher Smith, publisher of the American Cannabis Report, bringing you the roundup from Planet California for Weed Talk News. Come for the Ferris wheel, stay for the weed. Next year, California's State Fair will have a new kid on the block. Along with its famous wines, cheeses, olive oils, and craft beers, the state's 7,000 cannabis growers can now bring their green goods. Entries will be judged at a lab on 7 categories of cannabinoids and terpene profiles. It'll be the first opportunity for most people to see an actual cannabis plant, but there won't be any product to sample, purchase, or consume. Some things never change. BYOC. California's small cannabis farmers in the Emerald Triangle are the heart and soul behind the greatest cannabis in the world. And just like Napa Valley wines or Iowa corn, new regulations allow the region to market its appellations to indicate the unique blend of soil, climate, and generations of experience that conjure cannabis karma in the Northern Hills. Or, as they say in Humboldt County, instead of competing with factory farms promoting absurdly high THC, our sun-grown, organic, boutique craft cannabis is sustainably produced with the health of humanity in mind. Just add music. We got a campaign. California is the state of dualities. There's mountains and beaches, huge cities and little seaside villages, venture capital and Venice Beach, and it's also where propaganda meets reality. The Golden State is suffering through the second epic drought in 20 years. Farming of everything from peas to pumpkins to pistachios slurps 89% of the water in the San Joaquin Valley. And 700 residential wells have come up dry throughout the state this year, up 724% compared to 2020. The biggest slurping sound comes from the mainstream media drinking propaganda milkshakes and blaming cannabis farmers for stealing water. Don't let the propaganda fool you. God's favorite plant is not nearly as thirsty as the miles of oranges, almonds, and avocados that feed America. All are healthy. None should be demonized. So media, Lay off the propaganda. You're drunk. Hall of Flowers. And finally, after a long year of shutdowns, the Hall of Flowers Cannabis Expo is absolutely popping up in Santa Rosa this week. It's been a great opportunity for old friends to see each other, to pass from the left again using this year's key accessory, your own joint holder. Good times, or I should say high times, were had by all. And I'm Christopher Smith from the American Cannabis Report, beaming in from Planet California for Weed Talk News.
In Illinois, one of the largest multi-state operators that is based in that state is Cresco Labs. They now have 10 dispensaries in Illinois alone, and they're expanding their already existing footprint in Pennsylvania with the acquisition of 3 more medical dispensaries in that state for $90 million. Cresco has acquired Cure's 3 dispensaries that combined with 4 more that they already own, and that brings their total for Cresco Labs to 7 in Pennsylvania. With the rest of the news from the Illinois market, here's Margot Vaselli. Margot?
I'm Margot Vaselli from Margowana with this week's Weed Talk News Report from Illinois. This just in. Pamela Althoff, who's been the executive director for the Cannabis Business Association of Illinois since 2019, just announced she's stepping down from her position. Know of anyone looking for a job? Althoff previously served as a Republican Illinois state senator from northwest suburban McHenry County from 2003 to 2018. She subsequently ran for and holds a seat on the McHenry County Board now. Lightfoot just gave us the green light to expand cannabis businesses in the Chicagoland area. Previously limited to certain jurisdictions, this has now been expanded due to the high demand and increasing long lines. Illinois craft grow licenses applicants just received notices from the Department of Agriculture allowing for fixes to their applications so that they can receive a higher score. While the Department of Agriculture hasn't explicitly said anything, this is presumed in preparation for another round of 60 craft grow licenses to be awarded by December 21st, 2021. That's the Illinois Report. I'm Margot Vaselli for Weed Talk News.
In 2 weeks, the Vermont Cannabis Control Board will report to the legislature there a plan for how and when licenses for the new adult use market will be awarded. In the meantime, our green nurse in Vermont is Jessie Lynn Dolan, and she is always busy making sure her state does the right thing for both patients and growers alike. Here's Jessie Lynn Dolan's Vermont Cannabis Report for this week. Jessie Lynn?
Thanks, Jimmy. I'm Jessie Lynn Dolan from Nurse Grown Organics and Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the Weed Talk News Vermont Report. The Vermont Cannabis Advisory Board subcommittees in public health, market structure, licensing, taxes and fees, compliance and enforcement, social equity, and medicinal cannabis have met twice a week throughout September to address recommendations for the impending adult use market. None of these meetings have been virtually streamed, but the public has been welcome to attend in person at the state capitol. They'll be finalizing their recommendations to send to the Cannabis Control Board by October 1st. This week, the Marijuana for Symptom Relief Oversight Committee also finalized their draft recommendations about the future structure of this committee, as the medical program will now fall under the management of the Cannabis Control Board. Advocates, patients, cultivators, and consumers are still encouraged to speak up through public comment in meetings and written comments on the Cannabis Control Board's website. Once again, cannabis advocates have until October 1st to send in their comments, so don't delay. That's the Vermont Report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
In Massachusetts next week, one of the most informative, informational conferences of the year is back. It's the 5th annual Burns Levinson Annual State of the Cannabis Industry Conference in Waltham. It's an all-day event with interviews with state regulators like the Commissioner Stephen Hoffman himself, and it's held all day long in Waltham, a suburb of Boston, from 9 to 5. You can find out more on the Burns Levinson Law Firm website, and yes, Pro Cannabis Media will be there, and there will be an announcement at that event that could and should shake up the cannabis industry. Frank Segall from Burns Levinson will be our guest on Green Rush Live on Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern on the Pro Cannabis Media OTT network of distribution platforms. Finally tonight, it's the Bay State Cannabis Report. Here's our own Cannacaster, Ron Marshalsea. Ron?
I'm Ron Marshalsea with the Massachusetts Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. The former mayor of Fall River, Massachusetts received a 6-year prison term on charges including fraud and extortion tied to the licensing of local marijuana businesses. Jason Correa was sentenced Tuesday for extorting hundreds of thousands of dollars from cannabis entrepreneurs hoping to win business permits. Correa was convicted in May on charges of wire fraud, extortion, and extortion conspiracy. It is not yet known when his prison term will begin. Last Saturday was the 31st annual Boston Freedom Rally. Pro Cannabis Media was there to capture the change in the air from an event that was once about sticking it to the man while smoking defiantly in a public area to one of simply enjoying the legal market that citizen consumers created.
We're the stewards of Boston Common. That's Mount Michael Malta, named after the King of Pot. That's what we named it. It's that people get high up there every single day of the year. And it's great and it's beautiful. I love the fact that we have so many people here openly consuming and enjoying the right, the freedom that we worked so hard for so long to get. So stand up for yourself, advocate for yourself. Citizen consumers are important because we made the market and we make the market.
That market is not only alive and well, but thriving in Boston. That's this week's Massachusetts Cannabis Report. For Weed Talk News, I'm Ron Marshalsea.
And finally tonight, if you're keeping score at home, a new financial report on the growing cannabis market worldwide reports that growth of sales internationally will be 41% over last year, reaching close to $31 billion in weed sales worldwide. In the U.S., where the plant is still illegal at the federal level, the total of sales should reach $24 billion this year alone. Remember, 44% of the U.S. population over the age of 21 now lives in states where cannabis is legal, only in America. Yes, that would be a quote from Don King. That's it for this week's Weed Talk News. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly.
Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the costs low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.